Hi, this is R.N. Bhaskar from BKBB, which is an acronym for Bhaskar Ki Business Baatein. This is a channel that brings to you every week policy analysis, occasionally a business story, and occasionally a conversation. But at this time, right now, we discuss news behind the news. We pick up select titles that we think needs to be considered, and because they have ramifications both for India and for the world. Before I begin, just a reminder, please click the subscribe button if you're not a subscriber already. Click the like button. It helps us immensely. And most important, tell all your friends about it, about us, because we do things that many people don't. And yes, today I have my co-anchors. Let's begin with the co-anchors. There's Katya.
Hello, sir.
Welcome, Katya. There's Isha. Welcome, Isha. There's Anurag. And there's me. Okay. So we have four of us. And the stories that we're going to discuss, look at the screen and you'll see the titles. The first one is about how US is planning for another war, and this time in India's neighborhood. The second one is how fertilizer subsidies have remained high, but there's a caveat which Isha will explain. The third one is RBI's generous dividend bails out the government in its fiscal deficit. And the fourth one is a very interesting story. It's about private brands, new brands, how India is fascinated with them. Okay, let's begin the first story. The first story is serious. Occurred in the South China Morning Post. I mean, the only media which gave this news out yesterday. The US has already sent 500 soldiers, military people, into Taiwan. This is higher than the earlier 45 people it had there. And this also was disclosed at a cabinet, at a congressional meeting by a retired army person, where he mentioned that 500 people have already stationed themselves in Taiwan. This announcement was made on the 15th of May, 15th of May. And it was caught by the newspaper just now. China has not spoken a word, which means that China is planning. China does not like it. It's its backyard. It is my country. And the US officially has a statement that's one China policy. And yet it wants to provoke a war between Taiwan and China. What are the options for China? China may just talk to Ukraine, so talk to Taiwan and tell them, do you want to become another Ukraine? And hope good sense prevails. China can do a blockade. China has more sophisticated communication equipment than anyone in the world. It may decide to freeze its infrastructure, or it might decide to go to war. But watch this area, because this is serious. Anything is possible. And of course, India continues wagging its tail behind the US and behind the EU after disastrous FTA with the UK. Let's see what happens. Okay, let's take the second story, which is equally important for India's finances, and that's going to be talked about by Isha.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for joining me today. The story I'm bringing you today is titled Why India's rupees 1.67 lakh crore fertilizer subsidy is unsustainable. So in the financial year 2025-26, the Indian government has budgeted over rupees 1.67 lakh crores, nearly 70% of India's agricultural budget, just for fertilizer subsidy. So this makes fertilizer subsidy nearly 40% of India's total subsidy spending. However, these subsidies have not really done their job in incentivizing the industry to make production more efficient or encourage private investment in the sector to make the industry more self-reliant. In fact, cheap chemical fertilizers also harm soil health and work against India's aims for natural farming and even pollute our waterways and have disastrous public health implications. Additionally, these fertilizers that they are subsidizing are highly dependent on imports and global prices, thus raising the fertilizer bill without a proportional increase in fertilizer use. The Standing Committee on Agriculture's report titled Impact of Chemical Fertilizers and Pesticides on Agriculture and Allied Sectors in the Country noted that 45 million tons of fertilizer are required to produce at least 300 million tons of food grains. About 82% of this requirement would have been met by the subsidized chemical fertilizers. Currently, subsidies are only offered for chemical fertilizers, excluding liquid, biofertilizers, and organic manure. As you can see on the chart on your screen, expenditure on fertilizer has consistently increased since 2021 due to supply disruption as a result of China's export restrictions and global sanctions on Russia and Belarus due to the war. The CAG, or the Comptroller and Auditor General, estimated that over 90% of the subsidy payments increased by between 2004 and 2009 due to the international prices of fertilizers. So, such import dependence makes India's agricultural sectors extremely vulnerable to global uncertainties and risks fiscal sustainability of the fertilizer subsidies. Government payments to manufacturers are also often delayed, with dues hitting rupees 43,483 crores by the financial year 2019. Instead of cash, subsidies are sometimes issued as bonds or loans. Despite policy goals, private investments have been stalled and domestic production hasn't really increased. Outdated high cost plans still get subsidies, discouraging people from updating their infrastructure. Organic fertilizers remain underfunded, while chemical fertilizers that are being subsidized so heavily by the government are so harmful to our soil and water. Direct cash transfers to farmers, like is the case with China, are proposed as a solution, but the government deems this administratively complex and has kind of been dismissive of this solution. There is an increasing call and need for us to reform and bring transparency into the subsidies in our system, especially with agriculture, industry that supports such a huge chunk of our population. And we need to call for better use of our public funds and better practices when it comes to our agriculture. Very interesting story, very concerning. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, sir. Thank you.
First, the government, as you rightly said, after 2021, fertilizer subsidies increased. The Prime Minister had a very, very interesting theory, which was debunked later, that by mixing fertilizers with neem oil, you could prevent its misuse. But the fact is, it didn't work. And we do not have estimates of how much of the fertilizer gets diverted to other purposes in the industry. Fertilizer is one of the subsidies given to the farmers, and the government wants to woo the farmers because it's a large voting bloc, 50% of the population. Unfortunately, the subsidies have gone sky high, and this time it's fallen, not because the government didn't want to pay, but because the government's exhausted all its funding sources. The government is almost bankrupt had it not been for bailouts from PSUs and the RBI, which is what the next story is about. Can we have Anurag, please?
Good morning. Today's report is about RBI's record transfer of nearly 2,70,000 crores, 22.7 trillion rupees to the government. In this report, we'll talk about what contributed to this transfer and how will it affect the economy. So basically, the RBI makes an annual payout to the government from the surplus income it earns on investments and valuation changes in its foreign exchange holdings, including the dollar, and the fees it gets from printing currency notes. So this payout is 27% higher than the 2.1 trillion dividend in the financial year 2024. The RBI's dividend is the surplus it generates after covering operational expenses and setting aside risk provisions transferred annually to the central government. The RBI's payout is determined by the Economic Capital Framework, which ECF, which guides how much of the RBI surplus can be transferred to the government while keeping sufficient reserves for financial stability. RBI Central Board had reviewed the ECF as per the Jalan Committee's recommendation of reviewing the framework every 5 years. And according to the latest revision on 15th May, the contingent risk buffer (CRB), a protection measure against future risk, was kept in a range of 7.5% to 4.5% of the central bank's balance sheet. The significant surplus in the dividend payout was primarily due to the active participation of the central bank in the foreign exchange market. Notably, the RBI was the biggest seller of foreign exchange reserves among Asian central banks in January 2025. As of September 2024, India's foreign exchange reserves, which totaled to $704 billion. Following this peak reserve recorded in September 24, the RBI sold a significant amount of dollars to ensure currency stability. Till February 2025, the gross dollar sales stood at $371.6 billion, higher than $153 billion recorded in the previous year. The dollar sales have added the RBI's foreign exchange gains. Along with this, RBI also earned from rupee securities as of March 2025. Its holding in rupee securities had increased from 1.95 lakh crore to 15.6 lakh crores. The record dividend gives the government more fiscal space. It's expected to reduce the fiscal deficit by 20 to 30 basis points, potentially lowering it from 4.5% of the GDP to around 4.2% of the GDP. It also means that actual dividend income for financial year 26 may surpass the budget estimate of 2.56 trillion from the RBI and public sector entities. What's your take on this, sir?
Well, the RBI has learned how to use money to favor the government. When the previous government, Shakti Kanta Das, started this unhealthy practice of giving large dividends. And this governor, has increased that amount by a hefty amount, 27%. The previous governor, when he retired, was rehabilitated and given a sinecure as a second secretary to the prime minister, a post that did not exist. But because he was so favorable to the government, a post was created for him. Maybe this governor is also looking for a similar sinecure. Frightening. Okay, we now go to Katya's story. Katya, can we have you?
So a lot has been discussed about how urban growth of FMCG products has been falling. Actually, we have debunked that theory in our last story, but this goes ahead. There's an ENY report which has come which supports this theory. Is a lot of consumers are actually shifting to private labels, unbranded products, which are not necessarily loose. There could be local branded products, and these products are becoming quite popular. Okay, so the shift in urban areas is that retailers are offering it prime shelf space, and the 70% of people surveyed by ENY said that these brands are just as good as branded products, these unbranded products or private labels as we call them. And then a lot of it is being noticed in clothing and footwear, cosmetics, as well as personal care products. A lot of this is going it, and why are they choosing it? A very simple reason: the price. Branded products come with a huge price, advertising costs, etc. 69% said that they help them save money, and some said that branded products are purchased only when they are on sale, which means that a lot of people are expanding their FMCG basket. So the mood and the shift is changing. Like we've talked about it earlier, Gen Zs have very little brand loyalty. They go for value for money, and like a lot of beauty company owners also say that there's a huge shift coming from mass products to mass stage products to premium. So which means the way people are buying is effectively changing. Isn't that interesting, sir?
It shows how markets are changing and how the youth wants to have variety
Right.
and price, and the best, most effective pricing.
Right.
Excellent story. Thank you very much. And we are a little out of time. So let me take up just one question right now. We can take one question, and that is the RBI doing a valuation reserve? Yes, it is. It's revalued gold. And since gold prices have gone up very much, the gold remains the same. You've done a revaluation, and so you've got surpluses. Charming. Anyway, thank you for being with us. And yes, once again, a reminder, do click the subscribe button if you're not a subscriber already. Click the like button if it helps us. But most important, please tell all your friends about us. We need that growth. And finally, have a wonderful day ahead. And I look forward to seeing you once again tomorrow. Take care.